There being a quorum present, I call this meeting of the Margate Planning Board to order. Please stand for the flag salute. That flag. Attention salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Tom Collins. Here. Clem Wozleski. Here. Mike Richmond. Here. Jim Galantino. Here. Brenda Taube. Margaret Gubernalti. Here. Mike Cristaldi. Here. Craig Palmisano. Here. David Carter. Here. Despina Hess. Here. Remy Pelosi. Here. Joe DiGirolamo. Here. Rich Patterson.
Here. This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets. I'd like to hear a motion to approve the minutes of September 18th, 2014.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to hear a motion for the approval of resolutions and decisions. Number 41, 2014, Lucy Zhang. Number 42, 2014, David and Terry Davich. Number 43, 2014, Dr. Andrew and Donna Marie Barrett. Number 44, 2014, 427 North Kenny Avenue, Inc.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. First case is Mainland General Contracting, Inc., 9 South Granville Avenue, Block 108.02, Lot 19, in the CBD District to grant site plan action. Taxes are current and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. Rubin?
Roger Rubin. Yes, I do. The subject property is the Barrels Restaurant building to be demolished if and when this is approved, sitting on a parcel of 84 feet of frontage on Gladstone and Granville, with total depth of 80 feet street to street and a total area of 6,720 square feet. To be constructed on this land, per the plans of Peter Weiss Architect and Ponzio Company, is a mixed-use building with an 869 square foot commercial space on the first floor and 4 two-story apartments above, each with 2 bedrooms, den, and a great room. Each unit has a private roofed deck on Granville Avenue at the first residential floor. The plan provides in all 15 parking spaces as follows: 2 each for the units, which is 8, 5 specified for commercial, and 2 unspecified, one of which is van accessible and handicapped. The plan exceeds by 2 spaces the required 13 parking spaces. Zoning review indicates no variances in this plan. Note that in a previous case, a D or use variance was approved for office usage on the first floor commercial space if the owner wishes, and this approval remains valid in the present instance, requiring no additional consideration at this time. Action required is site plan action. The comments are, as with all site plans, the board considers pedestrian and car safety, aesthetics, access locations, conflicts, and the like. Suggestions may be made to change the site plan if the board wishes. 2, note that the only landscape requirement is the street trees, and the 6 trees shown exceed the requirement, which is only 4. 3, the parking, which exceeds the zoning requirement, is arranged so that backing cars out into the street will happen only rarely. There is two-way flow via a reasonable 24-foot wide driveway, and the commercial spaces are convenient to the store. The commercial parking spaces are convenient to the store. 4, there is a handicap ramp provided for pedestrians to the store. 5, the plan provides a commercial trash corral on Gladstone and under the building storage for the 4 residential units. The storage area exceeds the required 250 cubic feet per the code. 6, the driveway arrangement does not significantly impact the truck zone on Gladstone, although it may shorten it just a bit. The board may wish to require irrigation of the curbside grass strips on both streets to assure maintenance. If approved, all non-waivable city engineer requirements must be met as a condition, and 8 sets of revised plans submitted if necessary. And there is a letter attached dated October 13th by the city engineer, which the applicant has a copy of. The applicant, the Gualtieris, and their professionals should be complimented for persevering and presenting a development that is essentially zoning compliant as well as master plan compliant.
Good evening, Brian Callahan of the law firm Callahan Thompson Thompson on behalf of the applicant, Mainline General Contracting and Barrels Restaurant, Properties 9 South Granville. As you know, we've been here a number of times. First application was our 2 fee simple single families, which was denied. Second application, the commercial with the units above with the parking variance, was denied. We went back to the drawing board after listening to all the comments for the prior 2 hearings, and we've come up with a zoning compliant, no variances being requested whatsoever. As Mr. Rubin said, we have commercial at the ground level, 4 units above, parking, trash, landscaping. So I'll call Mr. Barnhart. He can walk you through it very quickly, since there's no variance relief being requested whatsoever.
John Barnhart. I do.
Mr. Chairman, can we waive Mr. Barnhart's qualification?
Yes, we'll...
Thank you.
John, why don't you walk him through the site and give it to them quickly since there's a full agenda.
Okay. I've got a number of exhibits here, but at this point, you've seen them a number of times. I only brought them in case you have questions. And I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing from me on this application, so we will make this quick. The application before you this evening, as you know, is the Barrels Restaurant site. Brian just pointed out, the site has been redesigned. This is the 3rd time. The proposal before you this evening is a commercial space on the ground floor, and I'll just orient you quickly. This is Peter Weiss's plan, with Granville Avenue being at the bottom of the plan and Gladstone at the top. Is a just under 900 square foot commercial space with ground level parking, ground level storage, and ground level trash area. Stair access points to 4 residential units above the ground level parking and commercial space. There will be a 2-way driveway from Gladstone Avenue as well as a 2-way driveway from Granville Avenue. All of the parking spaces with regard to quantity, dimension, and the parking aisles are compliant with your ordinance. All the setbacks are compliant with your ordinance, and the project as a whole meets all of the bulk and area criteria for the CBD zone. We're in a situation where we've done multiple redesigns, and we have a project that our client can live with that meets the intent and purpose of the Central Business District. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but instead of wasting your time with lengthy testimony, I think this is a pretty clean project at this point.
Mr. Barnhart, real quick, we've had a chance to review the Remington and Burlington engineering reports, and there are no comments in it that we cannot agree to other than the waivable ones: traffic impact, neighbors, location of existing forces and wetlands, etc. But all other comments that they have, we can match up and submit as part of our revised plan.
That's correct.
And the irrigation?
I'm sorry?
And the irrigation on the curb strips?
Yeah. That's correct, yes.
I don't have any other questions, Mr. Barnhart.
Board? Clem?
You mentioned irrigation. I think we
Turn your
should-
mic on, please.
I think we should relieve them of having to put grass in those strips. They'd be the only government strips on either street that had grass in them,
There's no grass on either street?
not in the government strip. And it's a maintenance nightmare. I think if they put colored pavers in there or something, it would be much preferable to grass.
Some permeable?
Well, that would not require a variance, that would just require a plan change, because that's allowed by our ordinance.
Needless to say, that's acceptable to us.
Clem, would you need irrigation for the trees?
Oh, yeah, still for the trees.
Yeah. The irrigation
Okay.
would become more important for the trees if you remove the grass. But we found experiences that grass strip does help with getting water to the trees, so irrigation would be important.
So you'll give us a plan showing the irrigation
Yeah, we
for the
have
trees?
modifications to make to respond to Remington and Vernick's comments anyway, so yes.
One other thing on landscaping. John, it's my recollection that along that street, there's a 2-foot distance between the inside of the sidewalk line and the property line. So, on some of the buildings along that street, you can see that. Some of them, the paving goes all the way up to the building.
Yeah, the condition does change, but yes, in some areas, the sidewalk actually goes right onto the private properties. In some areas, it's actually stepped back.
Could you landscape that 2-foot width for
Any-
the length of Granville Avenue, except where your driveway is?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, like, I guess what you're pointing out is, like, for right now, right now, there's a planter area. This is where the existing parking is on Granville. There's a soft space actually in the public right-of-way. Are you saying, can that remain landscaped? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that and to the bay side of it. For the whole width of the property, with the exception of the 24 feet you have to have for the drive-in, have a 2-foot wide landscape strip in front of the building.
You're saying between the back of sidewalk and the building?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why we can't do that, yes.
And I'm not talking grass, I'm talking something with height.
Yeah, grass wouldn't do much for you there. So you'd like some shrubbery along there?
Correct.
Along the base of the building?
Yes.
That's fine.
Is that on both streets, Clem?
No, they can't do it on the other street.
Granville, right. Which street?
I don't think you can do it on the other street.
Well, frankly, you could do it depending on what sidewalk width you'd be willing to live with.
I don't know whether there's the same space between the established inside line of the sidewalk and the property line.
Yeah,
on
currently
Gladstone.
on Gladstone, I actually think some of the sidewalk goes onto the private properties. It's actually the opposite condition on Gladstone. The sidewalk is wider, actually goes onto some of the private properties in some locations. So you would have to cut back the sidewalk to get landscaping in there.
Why don't we just stick the landscape in the Granville?
Okay.
I mean, that's just my suggestion.
Any other questions from the board?
This is a site plan, there's no variances.
Do you have any questions?
We can make it a condition of approval.
Well, they agreed to it.
We'll make it a condition.
They agreed to it. Anyone here from the public like to comment? Public portion is closed. Come on, Joe.
State your full name for the record, please.
Joe Tosi, 7 South Greenville, right next to Barrows.
Okay. Raise your right hand and swear the testimony you give in this matter is the truth and nothing but the truth,
I have a couple concerns. One, bear with me for a few minutes now. Back in 1996, 97, when I was acquiring most of that property and Barrows, in that settlement, I turned Barrows down at the last minute. The reason for that, because unlike the answer from the doctor I was buying the property from with the oil tank on his property. I didn't buy it because of the oil tank. That was in 96 or 97. The oil tank is still there. I don't know if there's oil in it. I don't know if it's leaking. My attorneys at that point told me they didn't think it was leaking. My question is, do they have to remove that to build their building?
I have no idea.
That's my question.
That's not a question for us.
Excuse me?
It's not a question for us.
Well, is it I thought the city of Margate made a requirement that all oil tanks had to be removed before.
Well, maybe they do, but that's not under the purview of the planning board.
Okay. Then where do I have to go to find that out then?
Jim?
Jimmy? Call you?
Call Jim.
Now, my other concern is, I know this isn't part of yours either because you told me the last time I was here, but I want to bring it up one more time. Gladstone Avenue, 8 South, that's my property. Also, 7 South and 8 South is my property. That's the back end of Barrows. Now, you're going to be extending that driveway of theirs to come out on Gladstone Avenue. Now, 10 years ago, I had asked the city to make that there 8 South in front of my property a truck zone to help all the trucks that were coming because This way, they wouldn't block my driveway from my parking lot. Now you're going to shorten that. I need somebody to look into whether, if they start parking a long trailer there, it's going to start blocking my driveway again. It took me 10 years to get it straightened out. I don't want to get on the phone again and start calling the police chief and trying to get this regulated. So, where do I go for that? The police chief, or do you handle that?
Please, Chief.
Police chief.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Now, there's one other thing. The alleyway between both buildings is not much more than maybe 5 feet, 8 inches, or not 6 foot. Yeah, I believe 2.9 is mine, 2.9 is theirs. I have discoloration on my building now because the way they clean their mats on the Gladstone Avenue side. And if you walk down there and look at my stucco, you'll see it's dark from where they rinsed it off. Over the years, I've asked them to power wash, which they have. Now, I don't want to have a problem when they start doing the building with my stucco. So, or you answer that? They answer that? Who answers that one? I need somebody to make sure this doesn't happen. Again, nothing?
Nothing.
All right, so nothing you could do for me?
Joe, you have me stumped on this. Stan, can we stop them from damaging his stucco after the...
But it's a very small alleyway, and they're going to be taking down this building. We're talking, you know, I'm all for them doing their building.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's really not a planning board requirement, but it's between private owners. If there's damages or issues with that, there's legal ramifications for that if you can show that.
So you mean tell me I should take pictures of my building, and then if something happens, I should bring it to, like, either to the city or bring a lawsuit, is what you're saying, basically?
Or before you bring a lawsuit, notify the other property owners that there's damage, and here's what it is, and maybe they'll repair it to your
Well, I'm trying
satisfaction.
to stop any of this before it happens. That's what I'm trying to do.
I hope there's not...
I don't want to have to do this, anything.
But the planning board, we're here to make, we have a certain jurisdiction under the law.
Okay.
And so we can't
No
go
problem.
beyond our jurisdiction. That's one of the things that's
All
beyond
right,
our jurisdiction.
thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public? Public portion is closed. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Make a motion?
Go right ahead. Clint?
Quickly, just about the dumpster on the Gladstone Ave side, any type of aesthetics, anything around that? What type of enclosure are you going to have?
John, do you want to answer that question? Pete, I'm going to get Pete sworn in then.
If there's a fence.
Just state your name for the record. Raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you have given is not
Initially, I was just thinking it'd be a vinyl enclosure. I mean, it's basically there just to... I mean, it could be, if you feel it's necessary, we could make it more substantial.
You just want to make sure the dumpster's hidden, correct?
Yeah. It's pretty close to the curb there, and I walk by there every day. I'm just curious what I'll be looking at.
So there will be a vinyl enclosure?
Fine.
Okay.
Like a vinyl fencing type,
Yes.
Okay.
like a normal
Thank
vinyl
you.
fencing type enclosure.
Anyone else? Like to hear a motion, please?
Is there any conditions?
Yeah, the condition, you were...
No, not good.
Okay. First, elimination of the grass curb strip on Granville, replace it with inlaid pavers. 2, provide irrigation for all street trees. 3, provide...
Is it permeable?
The pavers have to be installed permeably, correct? Provide irrigation for all street trees. Provide shrub landscaping along the front of the building across Granville, and satisfy all non-waivable city engineer requirements.
Roger, that landscaping will install some irrigating.
And, right, provide irrigation for all street trees and landscaping. Got it.
I'll second.
I made a motion first.
You made the motion?
Second.
Rich, before we vote, can I just ask Dan?
Yes.
Since this is, this is a site plan action, this is just a yes or no vote?
No, it's approval or non-approval. It's essentially just a...
I'm saying we don't have
we need to give a
do
reason?
dissertation, it's a yes yes or no?
Yes, I got you.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's just for preliminary and final major site plan approval, so if you feel it meets all the requirements of our zoning code, you can vote yes and say that. Or if you don't, you can say no and not say that.
Tom Collins,
Yes.
Clem Wozleski,
Yes.
Mike Richmond,
Yes.
Jim Galantino,
Yes.
Margaret Gubernalty,
Yes.
Mike Cristaldi,
Yes.
Craig Palmisano,
Yes.
David Carter,
Yes.
and Rich Patterson.
Yeah, because this meets all the requirements of zoning requirements for a site plan, and also I'd like to thank the applicant for going above and beyond to come up with a plan with no variances. I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian?
Sign your life away.
Next case, Marla and Leonard Rosenthal, 53 Seaside Court, Block 610.04, Lot 10, in the S40 district for a C variance for rear setback, possibly side setback, and possibly landscape area. Taxes are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. Rubin?
Roger Rubin? I do. The subject property is an existing single-family home on a lot of 50 by 90, 4,500 square feet. Presently in the rear yard, there are two small decks, first and second floors, measuring 10 feet wide and 4 feet deep. Per the submitted plan, the applicants wish to enlarge the first floor deck, or porch if you want to call it, to 26 feet wide, not quite the full width of the house, which is 32 feet wide, by 12 feet deep, and the second floor deck to 16 feet wide by the same 12 feet deep. In a discussion with the applicant while preparing this review, Mr. Rosenthal said they will be bringing revised plans to the meeting, reducing the size of the first floor porch to just 16 feet wide by 12 deep, matching the second floor. This was done to satisfy a request by the neighbor on the ocean side of the applicant's house. So the revised plan that you will see at the hearing, which Mr. Rosenthal will give out in a moment, will show two 16 by 12 decks, first and second floor, positioned 10 feet from the ocean side of the property line and 6 feet from the bay side of the property line, bay side property line. The second floor deck will not have a roof, but they wish to consider a retractable awning. Variance required. Rear yard setback for elevated and second floor deck. 18 feet is required. It will be 4.5 feet if approved. Comments. As to the rear neighbor, it is the blank rear wall of the JCC building. Regarding neighbors to both sides, the board's site visits will determine as to any detrimental impacts, if any, in terms of noise, privacy, aesthetics, or other factors which you normally consider. 3, all of said factors may be buffered by the mature stand of evergreen trees along the rear and wrapping around the south or ocean side totally and partially wrapping around the other side. 4, distances to both side neighbors' houses are about 20 feet from the enlarged decks, creating distance as well as landscape buffers. 5, the proposed decks will no doubt benefit as to quality of life for the applicant family. 6, the cooperation with neighbors is appreciated. 7, 8 sets of revised plans are required showing the aforementioned shortening of the first floor porch and clarifying the exact positioning as set forth above in the second paragraph, as set forth as in the second paragraph of A above. You're on.
Good evening.
Be sworn in, please.
Leonard Rosenthal. I do. Okay. As Mr. Rubin stated, I have revised plans showing a modification to what you have received based on discussions with our neighbor and concerns.
Take the microphone with you, please. Thank you.
No problem. Kim, would you mind? Thank you. Yes, please take it. There should be enough for everyone, I believe. As stated in the new plan, we have made the first and second floor decks the same size, which is 12 by 16. This will leave 10 feet on one side of the house, from the edge of the house to the deck, which is the side where our neighbor had previously raised concerns about the length of the deck. The other side remains the same, which is 6 feet from the edge of the house.
The original application. Can I see your copy of the original?
That's everything I have to say at this time, unless there...
I have a problem with the depth of the deck. There's no room to get behind the deck when the deck is built. And in talking to the building department, they'd like a 3-foot walkway behind the deck, so people can get back there easily for safety's sake and whatever.
Behind the deck, meaning from the edge of the deck to the fence?
Well, it's not to the fence, it's really to the trees. You don't want to take those trees down.
No, we do not.
So it's kind of to the little border you have, that stone border and the trees. I think there's only less than a foot there. I'm not sure.
It's about 2 feet currently, which is where the trees are. If you're asking for an additional 3 feet, I think that would be
Not
perfect.
an additional 3
I'm
feet.
sorry, 3 feet from that?
3 feet from where the rocks are, or
Right.
where the border is, yes.
3 feet from where they're currently, where the rocks end and the trees and area grass begin, not grass.
I think you have to shorten the deck a foot or two.
By 3 feet.
To give 3 feet behind the walkway behind there.
That's perfectly reasonable, and we can certainly live with that.
I don't know
Absolutely.
what the measurement is, so it will be contingent on the inspection of somebody.
It should be
What do you want, 9 feet or 10?
So it would be 9 feet, because right now, the deck's, yes.
No, excuse me.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
There's already some space there, so we want that space extended to 3 feet. We don't know exactly how much space is there.
Sir, if I may comment, so the current plan, that 12 feet, takes it to that line. So the end of the rocks is 12 feet from the edge of the house.
Oh, the rocks are 12
The rocks
feet.
end at 12 feet. That was
Well,
what
then you
so
have
now
to
we'll bring
shorten
it
the
3
deck.
feet in, so
Yes.
the new length will be 9 feet in
Yes,
depth.
I thought you said that there was a foot between the rocks and the 12.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, I apologize if that was
Right.
confusing.
Fine, so I would suggest that. Do you agree with that?
We have no
Okay
objection.
with that?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Any other questions from the board?
Does he need to amend the plan?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but we don't...
All I was saying was to check those measurements, so he has 3 feet. You may not have to cut the deck back that far, so I think for your sake, you might get a larger deck if you wait and have those measurements taken. We have a measurement to the property line, but where those rocks are in front of the trees, we don't know exactly what that distance is, so. Roger?
Well, I just want to... The deck proposes 12, it's 16 and a half to the property line. I don't think it's shown to scale on this plan, but there's 4.5 feet there.
No, there's not. Unless you take those trees down, there's no access if that...
No, I mean, there's 4.5 feet of space. The question is how much, maneuverable space is there?
That's why I said leave it open, so there's 3 feet from those rocks to the deck.
Okay. So,
Rich, are you saying because of the thickness of the trees,
yeah.
it's cutting into the
The
egress?
4.5 feet, you can't walk in that.
So if he agreed to 9, why don't we just leave it at 9 and you're fine?
That would be easy, but he may be able to get more than 9 if he just measures those 3 feet. I'd like him to be able to get as big a deck as he can. There's just a blank wall back there.
Craig said that he measured it right out to the bushes. What's that called? The railroad.
Border.
Railroad
tie.
tie is 12 feet. The railroad tie is 12 feet from the house.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right, well then, go ahead, make it 9
Okay, so
feet.
you have about 1 foot to the bushes, from the railroad tie to the...
No, we're talking about the railroad tie.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where the deck is from.
9 feet.
But 9 feet is fine.
If you cut some bushes back,
You don't want...
No, we don't want to do that.
So you're amending...
We're going to leave the bushes.
Okay.
We'll bring the deck in 3 feet as required, so 9 feet in depth only. That's perfectly fine with us.
Jim? Clem? Put your mic on, Clem?
You did your own drawings, I take it?
The revised drawing is my own, yes. The original drawings were done by the company that's going to be doing the actual construction.
You should have a professional check them, because there's some discrepancies. And in particular, you want them to pay special attention to the attachment of the railings to the deck, because that is often done incorrectly and not according to code.
Thank you very much.
Jim?
That includes both the second and the first floor deck that'll be cut back? Or is he going to just cut back the first floor?
No, we would have cut back both of them to 9 feet. We want them the same, we're going to make them the same size.
Okay.
They'd be 9 by 16.
Yes. Mike, you have a question?
9 by 16.
Does that change the variance?
It's making it smaller.
Rich, can we give them the 10 by 16 to make it normal for lumber and everything else for construction purposes? I mean, I'm not saying take the bushes out, but if he trims them, you get, and you're using standard lumber.
But if he runs the board the other way, Mike, he would not. The choice.
It was just a.
He's agreed to
an
9
option.
feet.
It doesn't matter. I mean, he's willing to do it, I'm just, whatever.
Okay. Just hold 1 second. Jim, I'm going to, in public, say, what would you recommend, 9 or 10? Do you think that 2 feet is enough space?
You're looking for an access, let's say, for a fire department to get back there. You don't want it to create a blockage. But I don't want to, I'm looking at the photos, because the photos were attached, and you do have a lot of overgrowth back there. Do you want them to maintain the overgrowth, or do you want to cut it back?
So you're recommending 9?
No, you're recommending 9.
You agreed to 9.
Okay. We're staying there.
We're staying at 9?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. We're fine with that. We were just discussing if we needed to move the shrubbery as well, we could do that. But if you're fine with 9, we'll leave it at 9. We'll leave the thing, everything else.
We're just trying to get as big as we can.
And I appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anyone here from the public like to comment? Please be sworn in, please.
Charles LeBar, 55 Seaside Court.
And spell your last name, please.
L.A., capital B-A-R-R-E.
Raise your right hand. If you testify about this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you got.
Good evening. I live on the ocean side. I'm at 55 Seaside Court. I'm on the ocean side. That would be looking at the modified revision. We met with the Rosenthals, and we came up with some agreements on how they would modify their deck. One of the stipulations that we talked about as an agreement would be to put arborvitaes on the same side as ours to further ensure privacy. That was our biggest concern with this, was the issue of privacy. We live in close proximity like all beach towns, but I don't want to feel like I'm living in a fishbowl. So we addressed those concerns with the Rosenthals, and we were able to come to those agreements. So this is the first time I had a chance to look at this, so I just wanted to ensure that the things that we discussed were, if the board was inclined to...
Are they?
Yeah, except for the arborvitaes, but I don't know if we didn't get to that portion.
Chuck, do you understand the deck's being cut back 9 feet?
Yeah, from the rear back.
Yeah.
But they originally had the deck to the edge of the house, and we voiced our concerns, and they modified and brought it back. There's a window, I guess, in the first level bubble. There was a window there, and we agreed that line would be, a fair compromise between both of us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in public? Public portion is closed. Did you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say, we did indeed agree that if required, we would add additional arborvitaes or other trees or shrubbery to increase that privacy concern. So we're happy to do that if necessary.
So is that a condition?
Do you agree with that? So we can put it in the resolution, a condition that...
Yes, yes, we do agree with that, and we're happy to have that in the resolution if that's
Thank you very
necessary,
much.
certainly.
Just want to be clear.
Yes, sorry.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Public, I'm sorry. Would you state the conditions, Roger?
Submit 8 sets of revised plans showing both decks 16 feet wide by 9 feet deep, and provide on the revised plans an arborvitae screen on the ocean side. Did you agree on the height of the arborvitaes?
We did not.
How about 6 feet? Mr. Labar, 6 feet sound good?
6 feet high for this?
Okay?
That's fine with us as well.
Well, they'll grow. 6 is good.
Like to hear a motion with those conditions?
I covered that.
I'll make a motion. Oh, double.
Mike?
Tom Collins?
I vote in favor of the application. I think it's a minor variance request, and I'd like to see neighbors working together to achieve a good neighborhood in Margate.
Clem Osleski?
I also vote yes. I think the impact on the neighbors is minimal, and what little there is has been resolved.
Mike Richmond?
I vote in favor also. Obviously, the rear isn't going to affect anybody, and the neighbors have come to an agreement, so I'm going to vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I vote in favor of the application. I'm glad the neighbors worked it out. Thank you.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I vote in favor of the application for the same reasons the other board members previously mentioned.
Mike Cristaldi?
I also vote in favor.
Craig Palmisano?
With the revised changes, I vote in favor.
David Carter?
I vote in favor of the application with the revised changes.
Rich Patterson?
Again, I'd like to commend the applicant for working with a neighbor and also working with us. I see no negatives here, and I vote in favor.
Motion passes 9-0.
Next case, J. Several, 110A Mansfield Avenue, Block 14, Lot 14, in the S30 District, to grant a C variance for a third-floor deck. Taxes are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. Rubin?
Roger Rubin? I do. The subject property measuring 50 by 68.19 feet with total area of 3,360 square feet presently has on it a garage and a swimming pool, which were formerly for the house behind it on Nassau Avenue. The property has a steep 5.5-foot grade rise from the front, as shown in the submitted survey. The Nassau Avenue property in the rear was in for variances recently for a new house. The proposal per the submitted plans by Donald Zacher, architect, includes a driveway on the right side at the location of the existing driveway, with a new garage in the rear, which is cut into the grade and protected by the 2 existing retaining walls. The house has 5 bedrooms, 2 of them labeled hobby room and exercise room, 3 off-street parking spaces, front porch at the first and second, front porch at the first floor, and decks at the second and third floors, and a third-floor deck is proposed in the rear ocean corner. Total house height falls within the 30-foot limitation established under Section 175-32E and 175-9 of the ordinance. Variance is required, rear setback 13 feet is required versus 10 feet to the closest point. The rear property line is not parallel to the front property line. Third-floor decks, these are not permitted, and the house is designed with a front third-floor deck 15 feet wide by 6.7 feet deep, projected over the permitted second-floor deck, but smaller than it, and also a rear left corner third-floor deck measuring 6 feet by 12.5 feet. Comments. As to the rear setback variance, site visits are important. Does the 3-foot shortage in setback interfere with ocean views or obstruct air and light from any neighboring properties? Does the closeness to the house in the rear by 3 feet create issues for that house? The board may recall there was a rear setback variance for that house from the required 13.44 feet to 10.5 feet. Number 2, third-floor decks should be decided on the basis of their impacts to neighbors, if any, of noise, privacy, and aesthetics, as well as the neighborhood pattern. Note that the proposed front deck is not designed within a roof structure, but rather cantilevers straight out onto the street front above but smaller in width than the porches below. It has also been reduced in depth from a previous version of the plan after discussions with neighbors. As to the rear deck, it may afford views to the applicant's family and guests, but can it create any discomfort regarding bedroom windows of houses behind and sideways? Often, people like to keep windows open for sea breezes, and a deck close to an open bedroom window may pose a problem. Site inspections by board members and testimony of neighbors are pertinent. Number 3, note the 2 retaining walls straddling the proposed driveway. The one on the right appears to be bisected by the mutual property line. The board may wish to ascertain as to its integrity and whether or not it needs to be rebuilt or strengthened, and if so, what steps are being taken regarding the neighbor and responsibility. Number 4, in cases such as this where there is a dramatic change in grade from one part to another of a property, the board should consider requesting an escrow and a city engineer review of drainage insofar as it is the applicant's responsibility to not create drainage issues for any adjoining properties. Minimally, the architect should provide testimony tonight about whether or not fill is contemplated at any location on the parcel. Finally, as to the garage, it is sited 1 foot from the rear property line and 18 inches from the right property line. But the rear roof overhang measures 1 foot, and the right side overhang measures 18 inches. How, under these circumstances, will the garage roof water be handled to avoid running onto the neighbor's properties? This should be discussed and plan revisions made if necessary. Other than as set forth above, no additional conditions are suggested at this time.
Good evening, Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicants Jay and Robin Several. With me tonight is Donald Zacher, who prepared the plans, and Jay Several himself is also here to answer any questions the board may have. Prior to getting started with Mr. Zacher's application, however, I would like to point out that Mr. Several, in the design of this property, has really incorporated not just what we're calling the street, but this is really a neighborhood. He has met with all of his neighbors, has discussed the design with his neighbors, has actually made concessions to his neighbors as to the location of the house. You all note that the house is actually being built further back than it has to be built. The lot coverage, the building coverage is less than it could be. He's really tried to make this neighborhood as great as it can be, and there's some wonderful neighbors who have already participated in Jay's design. I have a couple members of the public who are here to testify on Jay's behalf, as well as Jay's direct next-door neighbor closer to the beach is a physician who's currently in surgery, could not be here, but has sent over a settlement agreement stating that he was going to support Jay's application. Jay's neighbors directly across the street, who would potentially be affected by the third-floor decks the most, one of whom has the third-floor deck, one of whom does not, also indicated they are very much in favor of this application, and I have letters to give to Mr. Bergman if the board desires. Give this in a second, Stan. Meantime, I'll look to Mr. Zacharon to describe what we're going to build here, and certainly if the board has questions for Mr. Several, he'll answer those. Department, who are here in the audience tonight, have discussed the design with Mr. Several and have requested some changes be made, which in fact were made. So that having been said, we're going to get started with Don, but I want the board to know that in designing this house, Jay didn't just put a house together and say, take it or leave it. He actually took the proactive step, which is very rare, of meeting with everybody he could meet with to make sure that this design is acceptable to them, which is exactly what the municipal land use law contemplates in the board giving us the variances if it deems that they are to be granted, that the neighborhood scheme and plan are being complied with, as there are already 5 third-floor decks in this neighborhood, 4 of which are across the street from Jay's house, 1 of which is on the same side of the street, none of which are on the direct ocean front, which are allowed by the ordinance. So those are all not permitted, but were granted by this board. So that having been said, Zacher, would you please come up? I guess we're going to put the plan on.
It's 30 feet from the floor. Right. The 14 was allowed by this flood elevation committee that was established for crawl space. This can be 40 feet. Yeah, there's no
Meantime, Mr. Bergman, I'm going to hand you letters from 3 different property owners, one at the ocean side of Mr. Several's house, and the other 2 are directly across the street who support this application. All right, Mr. Zacher, would you please be sworn in?
My name is Donald Zacher, Z-A-C-K-E-R. I do.
Don, if you would, please walk us through the design where the variances are necessary, and if you don't mind pointing out how Jay's property actually could support a bigger house, but he chose to go with a smaller house to accommodate his neighbors with regard to lining up the property, specifically with the house directly next to his, so that apartments can maintain their views, and the property next to his at 112 wouldn't have Jay's house sticking out a little further, so his would look back to the 112.
Okay. The site is an unusual site, and that the grade rises fairly sharply from the curb, from the sidewalk, up about 5.5 feet or so, to level out to the area to the east, and all the way to the south, and it's interrupted by a driveway that exists on the right to an existing garage. The proposal was for the garage to be demolished and replaced by a new garage a little bit further back on the site. The existing pool is in the high plateau of the site to be removed, and excavation be had in this area here to accommodate a crawl space. Above that crawl space would be 3 stories, actually 2.5. With the side yard being maintained at 8 feet, the right side yard being maintained at 10.5, so the aggregate equals the 37% of the lot. So in all aspects, we've either met or exceeded the bulk requirements of the lot, with the exception of the proposed third floor 2 decks and the relaxation of the rear yard setback, which averages about 10.5 and the required 13.5. The rear line is on a skew, as demonstrated on the site plan. So the closest point, the proposed setback is 10 feet, and I believe at the right side wall, it maxes out to about 10.87. So the building is a 3-story building, the top floor being half the size of the second. The design is sort of a New England seaport design, simulated cedar shingles, asphalt shingle roof. The plan is for 3 bedrooms, an exercise room, and a den. The crawl space is more than adequate. It's less than a story. It's less than 7 feet high. We set that in order to enable us to take the grade and to utilize a crawl space, rather a height, to allow for flood vents, and we set the floor, and then we at 15 point and change, and then from there we went up 30 feet. So we have maxed out the allowable height. We haven't exceeded the allowable height. Pardon me. In terms of parking, we have 3 cars proposed, which is what's required by the bulk ordinance. I'd like to comment on a couple of Roger's comments. One, that there's no proposed fill on the site. In terms of the garage is an A roof as seen from the street, so the peak would be in the center. The slope of the roof would go to the right and to the left. The overhang of the roof on the right is 12 inches, although the wall is set 18 inches. The 12-inch overhang allows another 6 inches for a gutter.
Don, I'm looking at the plan. It says 1.5 feet.
1.5 feet, it's 18 inches.
You said 1 foot.
Pardon me?
You said 12 inches.
The distance from the wall to the property line is 1.5 feet, 18 inches.
And the overhang is exactly that?
The overhang is proposed to be 12 inches.
Not according to the P3 I'm looking at. It's exactly, it's the same 18 inches.
I apologize. You're correct. The graphics indicate
It's a detail you could work out.
your observation is accurate. So the dimension of the roof overhang is 1.5 feet, which is also the distance from the property line to the wall, but the intent was supposed to be, it's a drafting error, a 12-inch overhang to allow another 6 inches for a gutter. So the roof overhang would not exceed 12 inches on the right. On the left side, there is no overhang due to the fact that we're recessing a platform into the garage structure to accommodate 2 air conditioning compressors. So that platform will drain to the ocean side of the house and will then run off onto a gutter. Both the right and left gutters will pitch to the front, so all the runoff from the roof of the garage will drain down the driveway towards the street.
So we'll get a revised plan, reducing the overhang to 12 inches.
Certainly.
Right, okay.
Showing the guttering downstream.
And showing the gutter system.
Of course.
Okay.
The retaining wall on the left side, the ocean side, will remain intact. The retaining wall on the right side is subject to some remediation. Its location would be straddling the property line again, but there has to be some resolution with the neighbors in terms of the structural stability of the wall. There seems to be a slight cant of the wall that happened, I guess, during some landscaping, that has caused the wall to tilt towards the several property. So there are several ways to ameliorate the defect, and that has to be agreed on with the Hartmans. It's a capsule.
Don, you just said the retaining wall on the ocean side is going to remain intact?
Intact.
It doesn't look that way on the drawings.
It's below grade. It's all below grade. The grade on the neighboring property to the ocean side and the grade of the several property is the same exact grade.
I thought you meant the ocean side of the driveway.
No.
That one's going, right?
Correct. And also the grade at the rear, at the south end of the lot, the very rear of the several property and the property on the next block that abuts us is the same. So there's no differential in the grade there either. Therefore, no need for a retaining wall because the grade is the same on both sides. The only retaining wall that exists on the site is one that's buried on the ocean side, but it's below grade on this side of the lot. And as the grade approaches the street end of the lot, it then reaches a point and then it shifts down to meet the sidewalk elevation fairly sharply. It's a landscape area.
So what's,
so the
did
wall
you
along-
address the ocean side of the driveway? The retaining wall on the ocean side?
That's
of
not the
driveway?
ocean side. That's the west side. The ocean side, this is the front elevation.
Right.
So this is the driveway side. This is the Hartman property.
Right.
This is the retaining wall that straddles the property, and that's
So the other retaining wall is gone?
the other retaining wall is not
No,
really gone.
no.
It's there, but it's buried.
The existing retaining wall.
stays.
On the ocean side of the driveway.
He just said that's gone.
He didn't, that's what I was asking him.
That's what I asked him.
No,
Wrong
Talking
no,
about this one?
no,
driveway.
driveway.
What would it be?
That becomes the house wall, the crawl space wall,
Thank you.
a newly poured reinforced concrete wall.
Got it,
The existing brick wall will be demolished.
got it,
Poured by the new concrete wall.
got it.
So the only retaining wall that remains is the one that straddles the Hardman and several property lines, which is we were working on trying to fix it.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else?
Not from Mr. Zach, unless the board has any questions.
Clem?
What is the justification for reducing the rear setback by 3 feet? Besides a bigger house?
Not really a bigger house, but I'm sorry.
The front of the house has been pushed back further than the required setback for the house wall.
By how much?
To make up for the lost size, to make a functional house, we needed some additional space in the rear. So therefore, the request to relax the required rear yard, because we pushed the front of the house back.
Well, you push it back a little over 1, but then you're asking for 3. It's not a trade-off.
Not an exact trade-off, it's about 2.5 average.
But the total size of the house is also much smaller than it could be based upon coverage. So it's not really trading the front to the back, because the house is smaller than it could be as an entire conference. Correct, Tom?
That is correct.
It's 3,000 square feet. No, that's not unreasonable. It's smaller than what's there. I mean, that's smaller than most of the houses. That's best he could.
Is the proposed house is quite a bit smaller than the neighboring houses, is that correct?
That is correct. Mr. Several would like to make a couple statements if it's not, while Don's looking.
Have him be sworn in, sure.
Just state your full name, please.
Take the microphone too, and send from Don.
Please swear the testimony you're about to give is not only the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and nothing but
Okay. The question I'd like to address in terms of the house, when I had negotiations with, or discussions with my neighbor, I was accommodating them in terms of lining up our front porches. I reduced the setbacks required by the averages was closer to the street than I'm actually proposing. So we moved the porch, the front of the porch back. At the same time, his porch is large, and we extended our porch to accommodate them also so that we would line up. As a result of shifting not only the front of the house back, plus the added porch, it pushed the house farther back on the site.
Unless the board has any questions, we have no further testimony on behalf of the applicant.
Do we need to talk about the two shade trees, the two trees out in the street? Do we want them?
Yeah, you should talk about it.
For that speech block, do we have to have shade?
No, I think Jimmy's thought is, when the board passed an ordinance that you weren't required to have shade trees, they kind of sort of don't want you to have shade trees. Is that what you're saying, Jim? It may or may not apply on this block because houses are very high, but you certainly, it's not required. Do you want?
Thank you. I don't think there was any desire to put any additional trees in. In fact, one of the accommodations that Jay made on behalf of his neighbor, the Harmons, was to keep the vegetation low so they could maintain their ocean views out from their property, both on the first and their second floor deck. So if it's not a requirement, we are pleased not to put them in.
On the third floor deck in the rear, I mean, it's kind of hard to picture when you're standing there. There's no problem with that neighbor on that side, with the deck being that close to those bedroom windows?
Actually, it's not close to the bedroom windows. It's above them quite a bit. Mr. Several has an agreement with that neighbor that to the extent that neighbor ever wants to raise their house or do a third floor, he potentially would remove that deck at some point. So if it becomes a problem with the neighbor, there's an agreement in place to make the problem go away.
I have one more question. We see another common existing retaining wall that goes along the entire property. We ran into a problem like this in Nassau Avenue where the division went right down the middle of the retaining wall. Ownerships became an issue. We had to have it repaired, and then it was always after the fact that we can bring into a little bit of a discrepancy about ownership and who's going to repair it. I know this is not a part of the issuing of the variance, but we need to get it on record that somebody's going to be responsible for the wall if it's damaged or it's in disrepair. And also, we need to get it where if there's a issue where they're going to build up on it or they're going to reduce it, that they need to come back in front of the board again, or if they raise the grade in the back, because we have another condition where we ran into today where people are constantly moving their structure around as they build their new house. And it's just something that the plan, it's stamped in concrete right now, that this is the plan that we're going to build to, and there's not going to be any adjustments to it. And I just want you clear on that, and when we go out to do a site inspection, that nothing will change, there's not going to be an additional step. Roger, just dovetail with me on this, you know what I'm trying to say here.
I agree completely. Most importantly, the question of encroachments. One of the things we're going to recommend to the board when you redo the master plan is that zero lot line requirement for garages. That just doesn't work. I mean, there's got to be something more than that, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet absolute minimum setback to allow for drainage, because mistakes are constantly made by lots of builders where there's encroachments. We have issues of neighbors complaining all the time, water draining. So it's very important that you make that revision that we talked about on that roof line, and that when it's finally built, the builder is very aware that it be adhered to, that there be no encroachment and no water draining.
Part of the roof line, Mr. Rubin, I absolutely agree, and I think that won't be an issue. You know, the existing retaining wall, the big one between the Hartman and the Several property, it's about 60 years old, and it's not clear why it was built this way, but literally it straddles the property line. So
This is Jim, you might remember, this is a better situation than the other one we were at. What street was that on?
Nassau.
On Nassau?
Yeah, Nassau, 118.
But that was a situation where a house was under construction second from the beach, and the constructors of that house totally rebuilt that retaining wall. But it actually wasn't the retaining wall of the house that he was building. It was totally, almost totally, on the beachfront house's property. He rebuilt the neighbor's retaining wall, not to the satisfaction of that neighbor. In this case, I've never seen a property line go so straight down a retaining wall in my life as I've seen in this survey. So I guess it's just a matter between the two neighbors. It's always been that way and has to stay that way.
we're exploring some options, engineering-wise, how to keep it intact structurally, as well as to perhaps improve some of the drainage issues there. The retaining wall holds back all of the Hartman landscaping, so we certainly don't want to take it out. At the same time, we want to make sure it stays in place and that at some point in the future, it doesn't just collapse onto the several driveways. So we have to come up with a solution. We just don't know what that is now.
To follow up on that agreement between the neighbors, does that agreement stay with the property if he sells this house?
It does, yes.
It would stay with the property?
Correct.
Yes.
It does for a period of 10 years from the date the construction is completed.
That's a written agreement?
That is. We've got a written agreement both with the neighbor on the beach side, which is 112, and the Harmons, which are 110. Mrs. Harmon's here tonight to give a brief statement as well, and then...
As far as the retaining wall, are you looking at possibly one deeding it to the other in lieu of maintenance?
Haven't discussed that yet. Right now, the option we're looking at is some sort of pier behind the retaining wall that the wall could be tied into and then improve the drainage with some weep holes. It's just not clear if that's going to be the ultimate solution or whether there's a way to plumb it up and increase the drainage out to the street or out to the several property without hurting the Hartman landscaping. So we just don't know yet exactly what the solution is. Maybe the solution is to leave it like it is. I don't think that's the case, but we don't have a final engineering report.
Anything?
Can I get this gutter thing explained again? Where we're at dead on the line with the point of the shingle? I seem to have missed something where the shingles are hitting the property line.
No, they pulled it back 6 inches.
They pulled it back 6 inches? Okay, I missed that, I apologize.
You have to allow for the
We were
edge.
talking.
Okay, no, it wasn't.
The intent was to pull it back 6 inches for a gutter.
You're reviewing it.
That's all we have.
Go ahead, Clem. Turn your mic on, please.
Don, one other question. On your sheet P1, you show a railing going around the roof of the garage. Is there actually such a thing? You go to the elevations, and sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't.
It's true, there's a railing proposed around the garage for safety of any neighbors who may want to walk up the roof of the several garage. So this avoids the happenstance of somebody at the high part of the lot, as an example, on the Hartman side. Because of the proximity of the roof edge to grade, to eliminate the ability of someone a kid, to climb up on that roof, we're proposing to put a railing along the top, vertically at the bottom rake of that roof. Same in the back. So if somebody on the adjacent rear property wanted to climb on the roof, they can't do it because of the railing. It's really just a safety.
I just didn't see it on the elevations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, how tall is that rail? Don, how tall is that railing? How tall is the railing?
3 feet high.
Is it 3-foot-high railing on top of the garage? Really?
3 foot 6 to
That's not going to stop anybody.
Might stop liability.
Railing is a differential.
Well, I can't speak into the
It
microphone.
might be 5 feet high relative to the grade. From the edge, from the roof, from the lower point of the roof to the top of the railing is supposed to be 3 feet. But from the top of that railing to the adjacent grade would vary on the rear property because it's an A roof. But on the Hartman side, it could be 5 feet high because of the differential between the edge, the bottom edge of the roof and the Hartman grade.
Anyone else? You have anything else? Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak? Please come forward and be sworn in.
Paula Hartman, 110. Good evening, everybody. Happy Halloween. Thank you for letting me read my statement. We vigorously support the application. Jay Several has demonstrated himself to be a good neighbor and responsible Margate property owner. He has taken the time to meet with us and satisfy our concerns. He was fair and he put his promises in writing. Jay changed his architectural plans to allow us to obtain our ocean view, and we believe in his design. The proposed variances will have a de minimis impact on the surrounding property owners. Thus, there is clearly no substantial negative impact to the surrounding neighborhood nor to the zoning ordinance and zone plan of the city of Margate. Jay's variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan, and in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and the manner in which similar type housing lots have been developed in this portion of our community. I have a copy of our agreement that we can attach and make part of the resolution of approval.
Don't need it.
He'll leave you. No? If you need a copy of my agreement.
We don't need it, do we?
No, we don't need that. That's an agreement between you and the...
The board acts on the plan.
Well, I don't know if you needed to say it. Okay,
But
great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, you want anyone else like to speak? Public portion is closed.
I'd like to make a motion. Is there any conditions?
Any other questions or comments from the board?
You going to take one vote for the whole, for all the variants?
I think so.
The rear setback?
Vote against it. He can say, we can take 2 votes. It's up to you.
There'll be one vote? Conditions?
The only condition is the aforementioned roof of the garage. Don't have to
I would
repeat
add if the
it.
board sees fit to grant it, correct.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Oop, Jim.
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
This is probably one of the most unique, except for Nassau Avenue, properties in Margate or streets. Very difficult with the retaining walls and putting the house in. I think with the adjustments that Mr. Zacher made in the design that he actually accomplished, it's actually an attribute to the neighborhood. I think it'll be positive. I don't think there's any negative impacts. Little concerned about the third floor deck in the rear, the street front deck. It's really not going to interfere with anybody, but since it's at a higher elevation than the adjoining house, I really don't feel like there's going to be a major impact to it, and it's not large enough to really have a party where you're going to impact the neighborhood. So I vote in favor.
Clem Wasleski?
I don't have a problem with any of it, except, as Tom said, the third floor deck. And I do think that's significant enough that I have to vote no.
Mike Richmond?
As far as the rear yard setback variance goes, I think that by pushing the house back farther than it could be, I think that balances that out. The front third floor deck, I have no problem with that. The rear I thought was a little sketchy, but since none of the other neighbors complained, I don't think that's going to make, they're the ones that are going to be impacted by it, and they're not here complaining about it, so I'm going to vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I really think we need to revisit the third floor decks on beach block properties. I mean, this is about the fifth one we've had this year, right? Fifth or fourth? Anyhow, I don't see any negative impact for the rear setback. I want to reiterate that retaining wall is going to be an issue, and I don't want to be hanging out there on the wind when I issue the building permit and there's going to be a discrepancy on the retaining wall. But I know we can't hang our hat on it here, but it's just going to be a tough one for Roger and I to handle. As to the third floor deck, it's very small. It's not out in the open, and it encroaches into any other neighbor's light and air. So I don't see any detriment to this application, and I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I vote in favor of the application. There's a lot of properties being built that people in the buyers are in favor of. It's improving our neighborhoods. We want people to live and be happy in our neighborhoods. Obviously, the neighbors have agreed on all the changes. It doesn't impose on the neighbors. There are no negative impacts and no negative detriments, so I vote in favor.
Mike Cristaldi?
I agree with Mr. Galantino. We ought to revisit the third floor decks. The rest of it, with them moving it back, I think it's all good. I see no negative from it, so I approve.
Craig Palmisano?
I also approve. I agree with the homeowner and how he moved the house back for the neighbors' third floor views. Everybody wants a view on the third floor from the oceanfront houses, so I approve it.
David Carter?
Yes, I agree.
Mike?
Excuse me. I agree. I have problems with the third floor deck, but I agree with what Tom had said. It's a very, it's a complicated situation, but I agree.
Rich Patterson?
I'd like to congratulate the applicant for his extensive work with the neighbors, but for the same reasons that Clem Wasleski stated, I vote no.
Motion passes 8-1.
Excuse me, I voted no.
Oh, I'm sorry, 7-2.
I'm recusing myself from this case. Oh, Mike.
You want me to read it right now? Sure. That's where it's so cool. Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Who's that?
Oh, you're on case number...
Yeah, I got it right
This one here.
Right.
Spectre.
Do I have to say something?
No, just read it from there.
All right, okay. Okay, our next case is Eric and Madeline Spector, 100 South Claremont Avenue, Block 4.01, Lot 8, in the S30 District, to grant a C variance for third-floor deck, side yard setback to modified roof over garage, and roof pitch of 312 over second-floor deck, and possibly others. Taxes are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin? I do. The subject of this application is an existing two-story seashore-style house with 4 bedrooms and 1 off-street parking space on a corner lot of 50 feet on Claremont, 62 and a half on Atlantic, having a total area of 3,125 square feet. Per the plan submitted by Asher Associates Architects, it is proposed to completely renovate the house inside and out, add a partial third floor, additional first floor porch and second floor deck space, also add a third floor deck on the Claremont Avenue facade, and provide a picket fence on the Claremont front property line. As stated in the narrative of the application, the applicants wish to proceed without elevating the house to avoid damage, as it is an older structure and may not survive the raising process. That is not a problem with regard to the 50% FEMA rule. Conversations with a construction official by the applicant's representatives indicate that this is not a problem, provided the fit-out of the third floor and the proposed second floor bathroom are not constructed until 2017. However, this would depend on the planning board approval, if given, not running out before 2017, which would depend in turn on the state extending the Permit Extension Act, which runs out in 2015. And there will be more testimony on that during the hearing. Variance is required. There is a third floor deck. The side setback for the roof build-up above the Atlantic Avenue garage, 8 feet is required next to the house on the next street versus 2 feet, 2 3/8 inches to match the existing roof location. The low white picket fence along the front property line on Claremont. Ordinance requires fences to meet front setbacks. And roof pitch, 512 is required. There is 312 or 3.512 for a roof on the second floor deck on Claremont. Comments, as to the third floor deck, it is 5 feet deep by 10 feet wide and off of a master bedroom, not a public space. It is nestled into the roof line, not cantilevered or suspended over the street, and it needs no setback variances. There are 2 other third floor decks on the block, including directly across the street at 101 South, approved by this board a couple of years ago. The proposed third floor deck is not roofed. As always, site visits would indicate detriments, if any, to neighbors in terms of noise, privacy, or general aesthetics. Regarding the roof build-up side variance on Atlantic, it is approximately a 3-foot build-up with dormers front and rear. The neighbor to the right, the affected party, has an intervening driveway and garage creating space, so it appears to be about 15 feet to the main house next door and 18 feet from the dormers to that house. Do note the garage rooftop deck of the right neighbor. So again, site visits will inform if this is a detriment or not. The front fence goes to the aesthetic of Margate, wherein the ordinance leans in disfavor toward hardscape in front of houses and is predisposed to uninterrupted greenery as an overall citywide look. Having said that, the applicant's reasons for wanting this fence, not expressed in the narrative, should be considered. And finally, the roof pitch on the deck should be evaluated in terms of the overall aesthetic upgrades of the building's exterior, which are extensive, and which attempt to capture a traditional seashore style, one we do not see too often these days. No additions or conditions suggested at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubin. Members of the board, my name is Chris Balance, and I represent Madeline and Eric Spector, who are here with me tonight, along with their builder, Dan Foley, who's going to build the job, should be approved. The project is 102 Claremont Beach Block, facing Atlantic and facing frontage on Claremont and frontage on Atlantic. It's Lot 8 in Block 4.01 in the S30 zone. The variances, as explained by Roger, are relatively straightforward, and I think relatively insignificant. The explanation as to how this job has to be built out will require a decent explanation on my part and some attention on my part. Because I've not done it like this before, but it should and can work. The idea is a renovation of the existing beach block style original home. And the renovation includes construction of a third floor. With that renovation, variances are being requested, and like as I said, they're relatively minimal. This third floor deck here on the Claremont Avenue side, which is recessed, as we like to see, into the second floor deck roof, a small space just to capture views of the beach. That requires a variance merely because it's a third floor deck. The roof pitch on that second floor deck roof that the deck is recessed into is 312 as opposed to 512. And that really is for aesthetic reasons, and Mark Asher, our project architect, touched upon that. The third variance is the garage here. So the roof of that is being brought up 2 feet to accommodate a bathroom on the second floor. That is within a setback, an existing side yard setback. That setback remains the same. It's 2 feet, 3/8 inches existing, 2 feet, 3/8 inches proposed. It's just a 2-foot build-up, relatively, Mark consider that as well. The fence that Roger's pointing out, I actually didn't see, so you don't see it in my paperwork. It's similar to what you see and what was built between Barclay and Brunswick on Atlantic Avenue. It's actually off of the sidewalk, about 2.5 feet, with plantings in front of it. It's a low 30-inch, really landscape element fence. The Woolers do have a dog. It is Atlantic Avenue. It is a very active beach. They do have people walking across that corner of the grass, going to the park, get parking on both sides of the ranch at that location. And for the aesthetic and for the safety reasons for the dog, and really for the natives on their property, we're requesting that. Not to go I quite frankly think it looks nice at Barclay and Atlantic.
The left side,
when you
the
have
left
plantings
side.
in front of it.
Sorry.
It is all landscape.
I'm sorry, the right side.
Give that some thought. And I don't think that part of the application, when you look at the renovation that's taking place and you look at what Mark's done with this house and what it's going to look like when we're done, I think is fantastic. The issue we have to deal with, and it's really as between the building department, and we have that resolved, I think, that the board needs to be aware. We all know that, I think we know, that you're only allowed to spend the equivalent of 50% of the assessed value of the structure only when undertaking a renovation without having to lift the house. This house is 1.5 feet below where it is required to be. It is probably a 60-year-old house, 50 or 60-year-old house. It was built almost to grade. The garage is all block. Lifting it presents substantial difficulties. Not that it can't be done. We saw the Philippo house turned out awesome. Turned out great. It can be done, but in a project, it really adds to the cost of this project in insurmountable ways. It also affects the living space of the property. For instance, the garage would have to be cut off because that is blocked to grade. That really presents greater difficulties. The Philippo's house cut their garage off as well. That didn't work. But the main structure can go up. If they would lose the garage, it needs a substantial amount of living space. And quite frankly, we're using that above the garage for a bathroom for this project. So what they are hoping to do is essentially do the second floor now, and then the third floor, when they are again allowed to spend more money on the renovation under the 50% rule. And that is as of January 1, 2017. So what we call that, when we do this, we do this with malls like Ann Arbor Township. It's phased. We do a phase now, and we'll wait till they're allowed to spend more money under the statute, the flood statute, believe it or not, which is just a couple years off, to do the second. It's 10 years, but they've already spent, the point is, they've already spent money within the last 10 years maintaining and keeping this house up. That money gets counted towards this project. So it eats into it, so they're almost penalized in a way when you're maintaining an old house like this and keeping up all along. Every time they pull a permit, Jimmy's got to add that to the amount that they're allowed to spend within that 10-year period. That is why we are requesting that we be permitted, number one, to do this as a phase plan, but more importantly, what I would ask for is that generally these variances, should they be granted, are for 2 years, that they be for 3 years, so I don't get to phase 2, and I go to the building department, and the ladies say, that's great, I give the building permit, but the variance is expired. Not an unusual request, unusual for this board, but in this, I think, in this instance, it makes sense. Let me now have Mark Asher testify with respect to the house. And then if there's any questions with respect to what I just tried to explain, I will deal with those.
Mark Asher. I do.
Mark, you are a licensed professional architect in the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
You prepared the plans that inspectors have submitted for this board's consideration.
Yes.
You have done a substantial number of houses in Margate and are familiar with the zoning ordinance and the building requirements and the flood ordinance, for that matter, in this instance.
Yes.
Please explain to the board what the inspectors came to you asking you to do and how you have addressed their desire to maintain this existing home but renovate it at the same time.
Well, the package you have in front of you has the renderings, and they're shown here as well. You know, the house that the inspectors have, is a lovely old house. They've maintained it through the years. It has nice finishes inside, and you know, it's just not your average 60-year-old Margate house. But what we've attempted to do here is bring the exterior back to life and treat it in sort of the traditionalist vein to which our firm is, you know, is frankly drawn. And Mattel Inspector, I think it's fair to say, is a fan of our work and has followed me up and down the coast. She knows more about my buildings than I know about my buildings. So again, the home that's there, while it has a nice floor plan, you know, is really fairly dated in not in a positive way. The roof slope is too shallow. It just has some funny proportions about it. So we're really just, as I said, just going to bring it back to life. A steeper roof pitch, covering this porch. Again, just bringing it, you know, just making a little piece of gentle architecture here.
Mark, let's touch upon first, let's go through the variances necessary for this particular build-out, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do in phase 1.
Well, I think we can take them in order. It's getting a little tiresome, as you folks well know, about the roof deck question on the third floor. When we do it, if we do it in these houses, we're going to do it as shown here, tucked in, really out of your sight lines. It's really just not a part of the aesthetic of this house at all. So obviously not going to have any impact on others, neighbors' views, and so on and so forth. So again, just tucked into the roof line and disappears.
What about privacy and noise with respect to the use of that deck? For instance, it's off the master bedroom?
Well, as Mr. Rubin alluded to, it's off of a bedroom, so it's really not a public deck. I don't think you're going to have, you know, kegs out on the space here. So again, it's really just a peekaboo. You know, get out, get a glimpse of the ocean, have a cup of coffee, and there.
You've got Atlantic Avenue on one side, Fairmont Avenue on the other side. You've got one house on the beach side, but a substantial setback.
Correct.
Setback to that house.
Correct.
And then I think that dovetails right into the roof slope. for the roof of that deck?
Correct. So the deck is buried in this shallow pitch roof. And, we all know why zoning codes have roof pitch ordinances, to control bulk and maybe get a steeper pitch and something aesthetically positive. But the 512 pitch doesn't work for all things. I think it's really designed, the code, I think it has in mind probably the main body of the house, where this is really a porch roof that you really, just from an aesthetic standpoint and from a historical accuracy standpoint, want as a lower slope. So, this is really not a thing we're doing to break the zoning code as much as this is kind of the correct way to handle a porch roof in a traditional development pattern. And I think that's true for dormers. A lot of times we run into it as well. Shed dormers, we don't want them that steep. We want them to, disappear a little bit. So again, that's how that porch roof works. It's really just part of the aesthetic that we're going for.
We have one side yard setback variance. We have corner property, so there are two front yards, two side yards. We have a side yard off of Atlantic Avenue that you are bumping up a roof line over the garage to incorporate gas in phase one.
Yeah. Let me get this drawing out here. And again, something like this is probably in your V package. The garage side of this house, and I'll come up here and you can maybe see, and again, it's in there. The garage side of this house, we're adding just this colored section here, this V, just to steepen up the roof pitch a little bit, make that match the body of the main house, and also gives us the headroom in that bedroom on that side. So again, really kind of a sliver of a roof that is as much aesthetic as anything. And it's so slight that I really don't think it's noticeable. We could probably just do this and no one would know it would happen. On
that side, as Roger has pointed out, you don't see that as being intrusive to the neighbor on that side in the light of the configuration of that neighbor's property?
No, of course not. The neighbor's property is, that's their garage side. So the garage is really the buffer between the houses on that side. So again, it's really not impacting anybody's view or privacy in any way.
Mark, you included a little landscaping element with the fence. Explain to the board why you've included that, and a couple of comments with respect to their desire to have.
You mean
with respect to the property line where it's located in relation to the lighting.
Well, first we like it just because it's nice. Sort of matches the architecture of the building and brings that architecture down to the ground. A nice thing. It's a backdrop to the landscaping, and as mentioned, this is a pretty busy corner. A lot of pedestrians on their way to the beach. So I think this just gives the Specters a little pedestrian buffer, a little pedestrian privacy. They also have a wonderful little dog that will love that fence.
That's only on Claremont Avenue.
Yeah. Right. Correct. It's right here. It doesn't wrap around the front onto Atlantic.
And with the entire renovation, those are the only variances that are being requested, is that right?
Correct.
Otherwise, what is being done meets the requirements in all regard.
Yes.
And even if we were to raise the house, all of these variances would still be required.
Correct.
Raising the house has nothing to do with the necessity for what we are in front of this board for.
Yes.
The variances stick no matter what. If you would explain to the board what is happening with phase 2 very quickly. I know you had it on the back of this board, and then phase 3, and particularly why the parking count, as Mr. Rubin pointed out, is not affected.
Well, the phase 1 addition, as we're calling it, the phase 1 work is predominantly this exterior facelift. Reskinning this house, redetailing the exterior of it, steepening up the roof pitch, adding the covered porches and so on. That really is the lion's share of our work. We're not touching the interior of this house in any real meaningful way. In Phase 2, as we're lifting this roof in Phase 1, we're adding, I'll walk over, I think you can hear me without the microphone. And Roger asked me to bring this along just so for clarity. So this is the second floor plan, and we're adding a bathroom to that floor and opening up one that the bedrooms are very small. We're grouping those bedrooms together into one. So we're adding a bathroom, opening up a bedroom, and then the master bedroom moves from the second floor to the third floor in Phase 2, and then accordingly adds a master bathroom.
So essentially, you're moving a bedroom from the second floor to the third floor.
Correct.
The bedroom count remains the same.
Correct. And of course, that third floor is 50% of the floor below. This is not a very large house, so therefore the third floor is not a very large space, sort of tucked into the eaves and so on, but still, adequate as one bed.
And your overall height is still fine within the ordinance requirements?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further from Mr. Asher. If anybody would like to comment further on what I tried to explain with respect to the phase of the plan, I'll be happy to do that. I have mentioned to Mr. Bergman in passing that we would be requesting one additional year of variances because of the 50% rule, I would call it. We spent a lot of time on this, and I think at the end of the day, when you see what's going to be there as opposed to what's there now, it's just going to be another, Mark does a great job. The house is beautiful. It's just going to be a real great addition to, a good location, a real great addition like that, real pretty. It'd be simple to tear this house down, but we'll do it. Simple. That's not the goal. The goal is to keep this house and try to make it work. And as you can tell, we've put some thought into it.
Does anybody from the board have any questions?
Was the house flooded at all, Mr. Owens?
No.
The first floor?
It's one of the higher spots in the island. I mean, they got no water. My dad's across the street. They got a little water in the basement, a little water in the basement. The rain having got empty down is not a problem. Not a problem. One of the issues, and I mentioned it earlier, if you raise this house, what's unfortunate, you lose, this is all outdoor living space. It's an accurate patio. If you raise the house, you kind of lose that. Because then you need 4 steps to get down into it, and you then run on top of the neighborhood. And we saw what happened back on Union Avenue. It's not fair to say, hey, we're raising this house, we can raise our patio with it. Because at that point, I'm standing on a side patio, and my knees are at my neighbor's window. And that's kind of not what we're looking for. It would be a shame to lose that space. And like I said, to raise the house, you also lose the garage because it's all just block on grade. It's pretty tough to raise that attached to the house. It kind of provides weight almost. And you lose a lot of living space. And you obviously lose the character of what's there now.
Also, is that a garage right now? Or
It's not a garage right now, it's living space. It's a dining room.
Roger, I have a question. Are we then giving the picket fence, is that a definite variance? Because we didn't really talk about that at all.
Yeah, well, it's a variance. They talked about it. They said it's only 3 feet high,
Right.
and there's 3
Is it gonna
feet
meet the
between the
setback?
fence. What?
It's
No,
meeting?
it's on the property line. It's actually about 2.5 feet of grass there that looks like it's one of those configurations that looks like it's the lowest respective property. It's not.
Right, that's what I'm looking at. It looks like it's back.
It actually has a setback to it. It's not right on the sidewalk. It's like 3 feet back. But that is city right away.
So the grass is in the city easement.
Exactly.
Got it.
But they can plant shrubs and soften it.
No, most people do it and just do it. It's on the plan. I have to ask for it, and I think it's the right way to do it.
It's right on the property line, Chris. It's right on the property line. All right.
That fence gives a very nice delineation between the developed property and the public way.
Anybody else from the board? Okay, anybody from the public like to speak?
have your full name, please?
My name's Larry Dalsemer, D-A-L-S-E-M-E-R, and I live at
Spell it.
D-A-L-S-E-M-E-R.
And home address, please.
My home address is 245 Amour Circle, A-M-O-U-R, Bluebell, PA, 19422. And
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. And I own the property adjacent to them on Atlantic Avenue, so my garage is right next to their property. And being good neighbors with them for the past couple years, I've been reviewing these plans as they've developed them, and I like their existing house, and I certainly believe their new plans, I would love their future house. And as was mentioned, I don't think tearing down and building new would create the same vibe that I like to see, at least in our neighborhood on Delavan and Atlantic. So I certainly support the Spector's application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion is closed.
Make a motion, we approve. Is there any conditions?
I'll second the motion.
You want to state the condition? You want me to? Okay, the condition is that the normal expiration of 2 years from the approval shall be extended for 1 additional year, and that is until the date by which they have to obtain a building permit. Right, Chris?
It's fine.
Okay.
I don't know how things are going to handle it, maybe 2 building permits.
Yeah.
Regardless, how we're getting this handled, if it is 2, the variances will still be valid, so long as that second permit is applied for within that 3 years.
To make it easier for the record, why don't we just establish a date of, say, December 31, 2017 as, okay? Then we don't have to worry about resolutions and memorialization, just,
Our preference would be to pull 1 building permit ASAP.
I know.
And act pursuant to that. So
okay.
either way.
So December 17.
That's fine.
Just for the record, I have no problem with, I discussed this with Chris today before the meeting, so I understand it. I have no legal problem with the phasing of it, nor the variance request. We did speak about potentially coming before the board, I believe, again, for the second phase, but I'll leave it up to the board. It's not necessary.
Certainly, if the board's comfortable, I don't.
Okay.
That's not absolutely necessary.
All right. That's all I have for that.
Okay.
Did you get a motion in a second?
Yes.
Yeah, Tom Collins?
It's always a pleasure to see Mr. Asher come in with a project into this board. Again, I think he hit it out of the box. I mean, this is just an outstanding design, and taking a house and bringing it into today's standards, but keeping the charm and the integrity. I can't see any negative impacts to this neighborhood. If anything, this is really going to be just uplifting, and it's rejuvenating, and it's not a big old chunker. I wish more architects would understand our board as he does with tucking in the decks, changing the lines to conform to the building, what's best for the building and best for the city. I just think this is really beautiful. I vote in favor for it.
Clem Wozleski?
I think this is the kind of project we should be seeing in Margate, rather than the monstrosities we've been getting along Atlantic Avenue for the last few years. It respects the historical character of the town. And I'd like to compliment Mr. Asher on the way the requested variances were indicated on the drawings. It made it very easy to understand just what the issues are. I heartily approve.
Jim Galantino?
I find one fault with Mr. Asher. He said a keg on one of his porches. I'd like to see that in one of his houses. Yeah. I see the application has met all the criteria. It took a lot of work with the builder, Dan Poley, to work this out. I think we did a good job in getting it to the board this way. To the extra year variance, I think that'll help out with this case immensely. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve it, so I say vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I vote in favor of the application. The variances are de minimis, although we talked about third-floor decks. The way it's built into the roof line does not affect anyone. I respect the homeowners for keeping the traditional look of the home. It's terrific. And I empathize with them for having to go through the 50% rule, because I've seen a lot of homeowners be restricted on what they can do and the affordability and the values of properties in Moorgate being affected. So I empathize with that. It's a great project, and good luck with it.
Mike Cristaldi?
I think Mr. Asher did an excellent job putting this together and the way the whole package works together. And again, with the deck, I think there's no negative in this at all. I agree, I approve.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with everything my fellow board members have said about the project. It's going to be a nice addition to the Atlantic Avenue. I like renovations anytime over a tear down and a new monster structure. Very good. I approve it.
David Carter?
I vote yes for the application, and I agree with what's been said, and I also appreciate the fact that they've jumped through the hoops, the 50% hoops and so forth, in order to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
Despina Hess?
I'm going to vote in favor of the application as to each of the requested variances. As to the third floor deck, personally, I believe this is factually distinct, specifically because of the recessed nature of it into the roof. It's extremely private. I believe it's modest. As to any light air implications, you're right there on Atlantic Avenue, so any potential impact is basically to the air above traffic. Certainly no impact there, no detriment. As to the setbacks and the other requests, I see no problem there, no detriment to any neighbors. I absolutely love the white picket fence. I believe the fact that you even, I don't know if it was a concession or not, but it's not even on Atlantic Avenue. It looks beautiful, and I see no problem at all. I vote in favor of the application.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, I think the third floor deck is de minimis. I think changing the roof pitch makes sense, and our landscape expert, Clem, gave his blessing for the fence, so I'm going to agree with it, so I vote yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
That's good.
Chris, will you sign, please? Jackie has to.
Jackie, what do you need, 2 minutes? We got 2 more. A short 3-minute break.
What are we doing?
Jackie.
Next case, Stephen and Heidi Goldberg, 114 South Rumson Avenue, Block 19.
We have any left for the evening? Do you need to put that for
For the record, Ms. Pelosi is gone. Stephen and Heidi Goldberg, 114 South Rumson Avenue, Block 19, Lot 17, in the S40 District, to grant a C variance for pool location as the elevation will be changed. Taxes are current and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. Rubin?
Roger Rubin. Yes, I do. The subject property is a 2.5-story single-family home under construction and almost completed on an oceanfront lot of 82 by 80 feet, or 6,620 square feet. It was the subject of a zoning variance case before this board in September of 2013 for a roof pitch variance and a pool setback variance. Per the approved plan, the pool was to be located at elevation 10.0, 1988, between the porch on the ocean side of the house and the bulkhead, 5 feet from the outside bulkhead line instead of the required 10 feet, with patios on each side, and a planter area between the pool and the bulkhead, about 3.5 feet deep by the width of the lot. The pool is virtually touching the base of the porch on the plan. The board's pool setback variance was conditioned on the construction of a 2-foot clear railing on top of the bulkhead. This application asks to raise the pool to the same elevation as the porch, which is shown at 12.02 feet, 1988 datum. Also, the poolside paved patios are requested to be elevated to the same elevation, 12.02. So in essence, you would be able to step off the porch directly onto the raised patios or into the pool. The bulkhead elevation is 13. There is a lower patio in the bulkhead/longport corner reached by a 5-step-down stair from the proposed pool deck at elevation 12.02 down to 8.72. This is not a subject of this application. The variances required are pool setback. The pool setback variance of 5 feet approved by the board was based on the fact that it was at the elevation shown on the original plan, 10. The proposed pool will be 2 feet above that, rendering that approval not applicable to the higher grade location. The board approved a 5-foot variance for a pool at a certain elevation. It is now being asked to approve a 5-foot variance for a pool 2 feet higher. The board may or may not have taken the same action as it did were the facts different. The pool decks, per section 175-33D3, the decks and patios, which are over 18 inches above grade, must meet the required yard setback for principal buildings. The proposal will exceed the 18 inches above the undisturbed grade. Comments. Via site visits, board members will ascertain if this change creates any adverse impacts upon neighbors of view, aesthetics, or privacy. Second, consider whether there are safety considerations. Should someone scale the bulkhead and the 2-foot screen on top of it and climb over, would the 2-foot difference in any way impact safety? And finally, can there be an impact on drainage? How will the drainage be handled on the non-street side of the pool in terms of rainwater or ocean water overflowing the bulkhead during storms? Does elevation 12 create any more problems than elevation 10 in this regard? If necessary, the board should require an engineer report on this question. However, testimony may satisfy the board. No additional conditions are suggested at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Members of the board, Chris Balanson for Steve and Heidi Goldberg, 114 South Rumson Avenue, Rumson Avenue Beachfront. It is a new marketed house, again, gorgeous new house. Unfortunately, when I presented this application a year ago, I didn't notice, Mark didn't notice, whoever else was here didn't notice that the pool elevation was a different elevation from the deck. The intent was always to have it at the same elevation because if you can imagine now what happens, you come out your slider, you walk across your deck and you're looking at whatever you may be looking at on the beach, you fall into the pool. That's not the intention. The intention here today is simply to bring the pool up to the deck level. It is not because the Goldbergs want more. It is not because the Goldbergs think their view suffers. It is simply a matter of of this project working better and being a better plan, doing it that way. What Mark explained to me, I didn't actually realize, is these aren't actually decks. it's landscape, it's grass. It's really a change of grade. Yes, the pool setback is granted at an elevation 10, 5 feet from the bulkhead. With the coping of the pool coming up to 12 level exact, the surrounding it, this, as you can see, it's all grass. It's just terraced up, beautiful terraced up grass, beautiful hardscape, landscape plan, which it just needs to be made more cohesive. One advantage of the plan is that the higher elevation comes away from the neighbor's house because of the addition of the steps. So that higher elevation, the Turkey house next door on the beach, comes away from the Turkey house a bit. Mr. John Turkey was represented in this matter. Mr. Hankey represented him. We have been in contact throughout since the plan was submitted. We gave them plans. I talked to Steve yesterday. The Turkeys have no objection, recognizing that this is not really going to affect them in any way. It's probably a better plan as proposed. John Barnhart can touch upon the drainage issue. I got John involved. The driver picked up on the drainage issue. If there is one, I don't think that there is. Grass, higher elevations, it's going to seep it anyway, but John can touch upon that. And any other concerns the board may have, that's where the application is to change the elevation of the pool and the adjacent.
Chris, can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
I guess I missed something. On the plan, it shows the words pool deck grading on the street side, and on the back side it says pool deck grading, but it has that chicken foot pattern of grass.
Roger, I thought it was deck. Mark explained to me it's not deck, it's grass.
But-
And he just told me that tonight. We can change the plan if need be.
The intention is grass, just to raise the grade.
Excuse me?
To raise the grade to the 12.
Raise the grade adjacent to the
Okay,
pool.
thank you, thank you. That's better.
I do.
Yeah, I think so.
John, you are a licensed professional engineer?
Yes.
New Jersey, and you're planning license as well?
Correct.
You've been involved in this project since the beginning?
Yes.
You were here with me when we did this last time?
Yes.
Do you recall there being any concerns or issues with respect to the elevation of the pool by the board members in relation to the elevation of the deck that you've already been discussed?
The only concern in the prior application was with regard to safety and how the interaction from the beach side would be from the pool itself. And
If you really didn't think about safety, you probably would address this then.
So when the proposal is to elevate the pool essentially 2 feet above where it was originally approved, is from a safety standpoint, as part of the prior approval and part of this approval, there's a 2-foot glass rail that is intended to be on top of the bulkhead. So as you were to stand next to the pool or on the coping edge of the pool, there will be a 12-inch high bulkhead and then a 2-foot high clear glass rail. So you'll have a 36-inch high railing across the entire frontage. And then as far as having any concern from a beachgoer or passerby on the beach side having access, I visited the site today, and the sand does fluctuate, pretty dramatically in that corner, but as of right now, the height of that bulkhead from the dry sand in this area varies between 8 feet and about 6 feet. So once the glass rail is put on there, you're talking about an 8 to 10-foot height based on current conditions.
And John, that's all new bulkhead built for the new elevations. Actually, Mr. Goldberg did actually grab that on bulkhead all
All the way around the street end. That's correct, yes. So the variance this evening is with regard to the two, they're called pool decks on Mr. Asher's plan, but they're two lawn areas that flank either side of the pool structure, which is roughly 19 by just under 8 feet. And as Chris pointed out, the existing deck on the rear of the home is at elevation 12. The pool was approved at elevation 10. You can see the position of the pool. It really didn't work that way. You would have had a 2-foot drop right at the edge of the deck. You literally could have fallen into the pool in this area. So he's just proposing to elevate the pool to match this deck elevation, elevate grassed areas on either side of that, and then as Roger's report points out, technically the rear yard area, there's a set of steps down and an Ipe deck area that does conform to the ordinance because it is actually essentially down at grade.
And there were no variances. So the deck closest to the neighbor to the west, that's all at grade, and that's all...
That is compliant with the ordinance, that's correct.
Any variances necessary on that side of the house as well.
That's correct.
That's all I really have. John, can you touch upon whether or not you think the drainage will be affected as a result of the change in elevation of the grass and the pool?
I looked at the rear yard with respect to drainage, and the fact that in that back corner you have an open epay deck which essentially beach sand below it, adjacent to the pool on both sides, a grass area. Obviously, the pool catches water, and then you're just looking at terraced landscape areas all the way out to Rumson Avenue. Infiltration will be promoted very, very well in this backyard, and I don't believe there will be a drainage
The
concern.
fact that we didn't know grass was there makes a difference.
Yes.
That's all I have. Mr. Barnhart?
Any questions?
Mr. Goldberg is here, Mr. Asher is here, and I can address any questions that you guys might have.
Anyone here from the public like to speak? Public portion is closed. Any other questions or comments from the board? Jim?
I'd like to make a motion. Are there any
Is there
conditions?
any conditions?
I have none.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins?
I vote in favor. I think this is a very minor change to the plans that we already approved, and it's probably a safer option for the homeowners, so I have no problem.
Clem Wozleski?
The change they're proposing is not enough to negate any of the previous variance approvals. And with a house deck on one side and a bulkhead on the other, I don't see where this materially affects the overall condition. I vote yes.
Mike Richmond?
I don't see any negative impact on the neighborhood, and I think that actually it's a safer condition to have the pool and the deck even, so I'm going to vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
God bless you, Mr. Goldberg. You went through hell. This has been a great project from the beginning. It was an old dilapidated house that was torn down after Sandy. We went through quite a lot of detail with Mr. Rubin and I, back and forth, trying to get this building back to its current conditions, which now it will be. I don't see any detriment to the neighbors. No one came forward, and I approve this application.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I approve this application for the reasons previously stated by our other board members.
Mike Cristaldi?
I approve.
Craig Palmisano?
It's a sensible change for the homeowner. I approve also.
David Carter?
I approve, I approve the application, and I think it definitely helps the safety considerations.
Rich Patterson?
I'm sorry you had to come back before the board again for this, but it's actually better as it is now, and I approve.
Motion passes 9-0.
Next case is Holy Trinity Parish, Jerome Avenue, Block 212.02, Lot 5, in the S60/S40 district, to grant a major subdivision, 1 lot to 4. Taxes are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. Rubin?
Roger Rubin. Yes, I do. The subject property is the Holy Trinity property, formerly known as Blessed Sacrament, which fronts Ventnor Avenue, 134.92 feet on the north side between Jerome and Kenyon, and which runs 517.6 feet along Jerome Avenue and 357 feet along Kenyon Avenue, containing in all 59,980 square feet of land. Within this area are to be found the church, chapel, rectory buildings, and former Blessed Sacrament School, which has been vacant for several years. Until 2013, the entire premises described above were in the S60 zone district. In 2013, the Planning Board recommended, and the City Commission approved by ordinance, a change in the zone district for the former school site to S30. The dimensions of the S30 portion are 150 feet along Jerome Avenue by 75 feet in depth. The present application is to divide that area into 3 equally sized lots of 50 feet by 75 feet, or 3,750 square feet, which conforms them to single-family S30 lots. The actual minimum S30 requirement is 40 feet frontage and 3,000 square feet in area. And the purpose of so doing is to sell the lots for single-family development of 3 homes. The action required: this is a major subdivision from 1 lot to 4 lots. 3 of the lots are as described above, 50 by 75 and 3,750 square feet in area, and will be vacant, developable, single-family home lots in the S30 zone. The larger remainders lot, consisting of church, rectory buildings, and chapel, consists of 48,730 square feet. There are no variances necessitated by this application, as each of the 3 residential lots comply with S30 requirements, and the larger church lot complies with all the conditions required of church properties in a residential zone. In essence, this is a, quote, by right, unquote, major subdivision. By right because there are no variances, and major because the result is 4 lots. Per our ordinance, a by right minor subdivision, 3 lots or less with no variances, does not require board action and is processed administratively, as we've done many times in the last couple of years. Comments and conditions. As stated above, no variances are required, and this is an obvious furtherance of previous actions by both this board and the Board of Commissioners, which passed an ordinance rezoning the old school building as S30. Second, any houses constructed on the S30 lots will have to conform to all zoning requirements or else reappear before this board for variances. 3, a vacant, rather large institutional building will eventually be replaced with 3 houses conforming to the neighborhood pattern and will include more landscaping than presently exists, which is none at the present. Because of the zoning ordinance's sliding scale of building coverages, houses on these 3 lots will be permitted maximum at 36.25%. The 3 lots on Kenyon that back onto these 3 lots per their size ratio can have 40% coverage. This is one measure of building mass that yields an advantage as to the closest neighbors. If approved, all non-waivable requirements of the city engineer review must be satisfied via 8 sets of revised plans and the necessary transparency for filing with the county. In addition, county planning board approval would be necessary if approved. It is the board's custom that all buildings on this site must be demolished prior to recordation, and as such, the execution of the plans by the board wait until evidence of demolition is submitted. Absent any acceptable circumstances of hardship or practicality, this condition should also be included if approved. And there is an attached letter of October 14th to the board secretary containing the city engineer requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Members of the board, my name is Chris Balance, and I represent Holy Trinity Parish. With respect to property they own, identified as Lot 5. In Block 212.02, the property is split zoned S60 and S30. The purpose of this application this evening is to request a preliminary final major subdivision approval in order to subdivide that portion of the property that is zoned S30 into 3 single-family home lots. As we all know, the Pleasant Sacrament School building, which sits on the flagpole portion of what we refer to as the flag lot, has been vacant and unused for several years now. It is the intention of the parish to subdivide the property that the school building sits on, which is exactly 150 feet down Jerome Avenue, into 3 single-family home lots, which well exceed the S30 zoning district requirements. Each of the lots will be 50 feet wide by 75 feet deep, each conforming to ordinance requirements. The remainder lot, which as Mr. Rubin pointed out, has the church, the rectory building, and the chapel, still conforms to the S60 zoning district requirements. Churches and houses of worship are permitted in a residential zone such as S60. The only conditions imposed upon them are certain conditions. We will look for a conditional use. Roger went through and pointed out that the church rectory building in the S60 lot conforms in all respects to the conditional use requirements, making this a by right plan in one that the New Jersey statute, which addresses major subdivisions, indicates that the board should comply with the ordinance. John Barnhart's office prepared the plan. I just want John to get some testimony on the record. Should indeed arise.
What's your name for the record?
John Barnhart?
Swear the testimony you're about to give is not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
John, your credentials are a licensed professional engineer and a professional planner,
That's correct.
both in the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
You have worked in Margate as many nights as I have in the last 5 years.
Yes.
And you are familiar with the ordinance, the property, and the subdivision requirements for this particular property.
Yes.
Touch upon what is requested from the plan that is.
As Mr. Valenson pointed out, the proposal is before you this evening is to take a portion of the church property, which is, and I'll just orient you quickly, this being Jerome Avenue, right down the center of the plan here. Take a portion which is 75 feet in depth off of Jerome and 150 feet in width that lies now in the S30 zone, and to develop demolish the existing school structure and to subdivide that property into 3 single-family building lots that will all well exceed the S30 zoning criteria. And the remainder of the property, you can see in the yellow outline, would remain with the church facility. Obviously, you know the church sitting right up on the corner of Jerome and Ventnor Avenue. The balance of the land that will stay with the church is just over an acre in size, and the application complies in all respects with the zoning ordinance.
John, the 3 lots that are proposed, they have been designed such that they line up as close as can be with the lots behind on Kenyon. So you'll have really a more uniform development pattern on that end of the block between Jerome and Kenyon.
That's correct. You can see, you can see the back of the school facility is 3 existing single-family homes. The proposal will basically create a more consistent pattern up to the side lot line of what will now be the church property line.
And the way the property has been zoned and now subdivided, a drive aisle, the drive aisle from Jerome back to Kenyon is preserved.
That's correct.
And otherwise, each of the lots that is proposed, the 3 residential building lots, conform in all respects.
That's correct.
Margate's zoning ordinance.
Yes.
And to the state standards for major subdivision approval.
Yes.
The remainder lot, which is in the S60 zone, meets the conditional use standards for a house of worship or a church in a residential zone under Margate's ordinance.
Correct.
Therefore, the 4-lot subdivision as proposed is what we call a by right subdivision, or conforms to ordinance standards with no discretionary relief.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Barnhart. I have nothing further.
Any questions from anyone on the board? Is anyone here from the public who would like to comment? Please come forward and be sworn in. And please speak into the microphone.
21 North Kenyon Avenue.
Please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give is not only the truth, but the truth.
Just for the records, I'd like to say this is a really bittersweet situation that's going on. I've lived here permanently for 8 years, but have been right on that avenue for 30-some years, and I miss the children's laughter in the morning. So it's something that, we're going to miss. Just here for the records, I'm here because I want to know that it's just posted for the records. I'm interested in a few things. My house is directly behind the school, so I am interested in 3 major things. One is grading of the property. The second is the drainage. I don't know if they're 2 of the same things, but the drainage. And the foundation of the existing blacktop being torn up. My property directly is attached to that. So for the records, I just want it to be known that whoever is doing this project, that they are responsible for that. And I just want that known for the records. I feel as though it's a very good thing that's going to happen. It's going to up our value property. So for that reason alone, we're all for it. I just want to make sure that everything's up and up.
Do you have any comment, Jim?
Put it on record right now that after demolition of property, the grading of the property will be done according to the specification of the ordinance. And that is, I'm trying to remember directly how it says. I think it has to be flat, level, and not to create any runoff onto your property. But I don't know about the asphalt.
Right, because there is a big difference in the level of the property from the church blacktop to our property. So I just want to make sure everything is going to...
Is your property higher or lower?
Ours is higher or lower, our property? I'm not sure. Well, I just want to make sure that it's going to be 100% right.
Okay. Thank you.
What if I do this, I'll give her my card and she can contact me directly.
Great idea.
Anyone else like to speak? Please step forward and be sworn in.
May I get your full name, please? Karen Barron. Spell your last name? T-A-R-R-A. North Carolina. Raise your right hand. You swear to testimony about the municipality of the truth and nothing but the truth.
My question is also about drainage, because I'm 128 North Round next to the lot, and my lot is lower, so I'm worried about the flooding. It already floods down Jerome Avenue up to my knee on a bad rain. Up across from Avenue Flood, so that's an issue. Where that's going to go.
Well, the building inspector will also give you his card because you're not allowed to drain onto your neighbor's property when they rebuild it, but any questions, he can address them.
I think we'll have a comprehensive demolition plan prior to the demolition of this school. This way we can address it with the neighbors. We'll have a meeting maybe if that's the case.
I would also add that right now it's about 100% developed with concrete or buildings. The requirement for the 3 houses, if this is approved, would be at least 35% of all that land has to be open, grass, vegetative drainage. So that's going to help a lot.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Make a motion.
Public portion is closed.
Nothing further, Mr. President. Thank you.
Get that?
Who's second?
He made it. Mike.
Tom Collins?
And the condition, the conditions are revised plans, all non-waivable requirements of the city engineer's review, county planning board approval, and demolition prior to recordation. Mr. Valentin, do you have anything to say about that, or is that not a problem?
This is a major subdivision. There is not the 180-day, 109-day requirement as there was a minor. It's required that the map be filed within a certain number of days after the secretary signs the map. Therefore, we can actually wait to sign that subdivision plan recorded until we figure out what's happening with demolition.
Okay.
Should I need to request some relief for that or from that, I can come back, but I'm not going to request that tonight. The standard conditions are one.
Okay. I'm good.
Tom Collins?
With this major subdivision and the fact that the church occupies the predominance of the block that we're talking about, for safety issues, for parking issues, for all the churchgoers, cutting in driveways, backing out onto Jerome Avenue from houses, taking away property that floods at the end. I mean, it's just to me, it's a wrong place to do a subdivision of this type. It doesn't fit with what the predominance of the block is, so I vote no.
Clyde Moslewski?
I'm just pleased they didn't come in and try to divide it into 4 lots instead of 3. I vote yes.
Mike Richmond?
I vote yes. It's a by right subdivision. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
If it's by right, then why are we voting?
It's a major subdivision. We have to vote on majors. It's minors that we change the rules for.
But isn't a no vote just a diminished vote?
Say that again?
Isn't a no vote just, I don't understand why, if you vote no, would the application be turned down?
Yes, and then they would sue us.
Oh. By the way, just for the people who came for testimony, please email me if you have any questions, and I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernati?
I vote in favor of the application. I like that at least it's a uniform plan that you've made there, so they back up to the other houses on Kenyon.
Mike Cristaldi?
I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano?
They exceed the lot requirements, and they're conforming to the neighborhood patterns, and I vote yes also.
David Carter?
I vote yes.
And Rich Patterson?
This is basically just a continuance of what we did before. We knew this was coming, and besides suing us, we would also be reprimanded by the courts. That being aside, I think this is a good thing, and I vote yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Thank you all very much. I apologize for everybody having listened to this.
And make a motion, we close the meeting?
No, we have business.
No.
Yes.
You don't need her to transcribe, do you?
No, we don't? I don't know. I thought we were discussing something for next year.
Talking about the calendar. Oh, okay. We don't need it. No. Tom has something. What's that? Maybe. Mr. Collins has. Exactly.
Tom,
I got a 10-month-old. What's that?
You want to get everybody's attention?
on the board?
Yeah.
Sit.
Hey, I got a blue card.
I have it too.
Just before we leave, we're discussing things. Stop talking about the greenhouse.
Just real quick before we leave, I think Mr. Galantino brought up a very valid point in the first case with the third-floor decks. And right now, our ordinance says that if it faces the water, it's permitted. And then there really is no other ordinance, just not permitted anywhere else. So what Jim was saying is we're getting a preponderance of people just saying, well, I'm going to put one here, put one there, and we're getting a lot of variances. Instead of waiting...
Excuse me, we still have a meeting here. If you'd like to talk, you could go outside. Thank you.
Instead of us waiting, it's just a suggestion, until we do a complete master plan, it might be better if we either had a committee, which we don't have to decide tonight, and came up with, like what Mr. Asher did, where we say it can be on a street front, we say it can be so big, and it has to be nestled in, and give them guidelines so they don't come in for rear, side, back. And then we said, no, this is what, we're giving them, basically saying, this is what we're going to approve, so you don't need a variance.
Well, Raj, can we amend the ordinance just like we do with the floodplain? Do we go in and do like amending?
You could amend the ordinance. Tom, you'll remember that a few years ago, like 2000, I don't know, 8, 9, something like that, this board, passed an ordinance that allowed third-floor decks.
Right.
And then 1 or 2 years...
When we passed that, Roger, it was on a case-by-case basis.
No,
this is before that.
There was a universal third-floor deck allowance, and then 1 to 2 years after you passed it, you said, we don't like that. We're getting rid of it. We'll only allow it on the water, and everything else on a case-by-case basis. And I think the problem is finding the criteria could be very difficult.
I agree with both of you, because if we just allowed third-floor decks, people now, the ones that come before us, you'll notice they say, this is set back in with a roof line. They're much more careful than if they had carte blanche to come in with decks, which agrees with what you're saying if we put the restrictions on it. But I don't know if that's going to do any good or not, because...
Or limit them to the front, not sides, rears.
That was the first rear we've ever had tonight.
I think the intent is good, but I think it's important to maintain control over a case-by-case basis. We know what we're looking for. They'll learn what we're looking for, but you want to review it.
They have learned what we're looking for.
Right, and
they
they're
are
doing
coming
it.
in. They are coming in with a deck set back in. And I know we're approving them all, but I think because they're
non-conforming.
Because they know what we're looking for.
They're keying into what you...
In this case, like Clem really didn't want to vote for it because it just had that rear deck.
Well, so I didn't either.
I know.
I thought it was obnoxious,
But
so.
if we, well, okay. I just thought.
But we can-
More
right.
guidelines out to the architect, then we wouldn't be dealing with that. We'd only be dealing with the front.
I think that was a pretty, good night.
Thank you. The neighbors don't complain. How about that guy sells his house and the next...
My point exactly. That's why I asked if his contract followed the house and not the person.
And 90% of the people who live in Margate will not complain about the neighbor because they don't want to live next to somebody if they're bitching about it.
Exactly, that's what we're here for. We're here to represent the neighbors.
And again, that's good that we have differing opinions. That's why there's an even vote. So it's good that Clem voted no. I agree with that. Even though I don't have the same vote, I agree with that because we're not voting on the people and if we like them, if we think they're going to be okay and their neighbors. It's about the action for the house forever. So
I'm just afraid we're going to get a lot more side and rear yard, third
So
floor
we
deck.
go. So we turn them down?
we turn them down. You turn them down.
I mean, I'm not for third floor decks.
I am.
He's a fireman and he's sort of...
Because of the beach, I think.
Try to get a 200-pound guy out a window.
Houses now are 4 stories.
What?
We have 3-story houses.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
right.
You're right. Now you're at 40 feet. Don't hang out a window at 40 feet. You know, if you're standing on a deck, you're on a deck, you're safe. You're not hanging out a window. 40 feet.
Well,
That's your
The fireman died, fell out a 4th floor window, the Ventnor fireman, years ago, Kenny Whalen.
Right.
4 floors. Right now, they have 4 floors. You put attic, 3rd floor, and 4th floor living areas, most of the time, there are kids up there. There are children in the top floors. That's where they put the kids. Go ahead upstairs, it's quiet, and that's where they put the bedrooms and the other bathrooms.
But these people aren't building the third floor decks for safety.
For what?
They're not building them for safety.
No, they're building for children.
They want to see the ocean.
They're building for children and kids and stuff like that, younger people that can walk up 4 stories. That's why I
They have elevators.
So like I'm saying, they're building for their master suite on the 3rd floor, not for the kids, basically.
Yeah, and they're small.
This wasn't that small.
This wasn't small.
Experience as a builder, what he's saying is true. Most of the third floor
Our
space.
children, get in here, children.
That's true.
If they have a deck to go out on for an escape, that's, for me, that's big.
Yeah.
So you like
I like it, I don't have much problem with the 3rd floor deck, only because I was a fireman, that's why.
I just have a problem when there's wedged in between houses or up against neighbors. If in the front street.
Rich, what you wrote your notes from, Nancy wrote out, they were looking down towards the ocean, and they were looking at the ship.
There was a bedroom window right there. The only thing he said was it's going to be over the bedroom window, so they can peer down on the bed instead of peering in directly. Well, I don't think that was a good reason either. That's what my point, peering down was worse. So we can vote no. Look, we approved those houses on Essex Avenue. I would doubt if we'd approve, there's 5 more lots that are going. I doubt if we're going to give them all 5 bedrooms. We did it once and we learned from it.
Yeah, but all the
Well,
neighbors.
we'll find out, won't we?
All the neighbors.
You know damn
came
well
in.
they're going to come in with the same thing for the next houses, 5-bedroom, and we're going to turn, well,
But all the neighbors came in and said, oh, well, if we can do it too, we won't object to it.
The
And
neighbors
we,
said it that night.
right, and we pass it, now they're going to come in.
And we're gonna say no.
No.
this will.
they were oversized by 300 square feet. They were just a little bit narrow.
Those houses are huge. All they kept saying was, these are moderate houses, these are moderate houses. What's his name said it?
It was Baklava. What do you want?
No, it was the Ponzio. I mean, he must have said these are small houses 100
Ponzio,
times.
Baklava.
And you hear that enough times and you're thinking, yeah, these are small houses. They were huge houses.
That's what we just did.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Whatever.
That
But
was it.
I really think we need to look at those decks. I think we have control on it by looking at the decks. And if we approve them all, that's because they're coming in with what we want. I mean, I would want a 3rd floor deck on the beach block too, but, you know,
And why'd you vote no?
because I don't have a house on the beach block, so screw them if they can't take it
Go
to
for
them.
the rear, not for the front.
Rich, we said on the water, is beach block on the water?
No, facing
No,
the
on the
beach,
water's
on the beach.
permitted.
On the bay and the beach, that's what's permitted.
Beachfront.
Yes.
Facing, not facing the avenue.
Right.
Facing.
On the
Well, no,
side
as variances, but you don't need variances if you're facing the water.
And only the side of the wall facing the ocean.
Right.
Not just face, I think we should definitely.
Right, that's the front, but I mean, it can't be on the street side.
Johanna?
You can end up with wraparound
Yes.
third floor decks.
Well, yeah.
And
So
spiral
we'll-
staircases?
So we'll wait for the master plan. Johanna, you had something?
No,
You said something about January. No.
that's you and I.
Oh!
You and I, buddy.
Ooh.
I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Good work. Good work.